You're listening to the Zoe Turner podcast, business and mindset conversations that will help you move from fear and uncertainty to development and growth so that you can crush both life and business. Please welcome your host, Zoe Turner.
Done some amazing challenges, 30 marathons in 30 days, running around a track for 24 hours straight, MDS. But what I want to focus on, Marcus, today is your love for endurance and your journey really, and how you discovered your passion, and what was the kind of one race that started the craziness for you when it comes to endurance?
It's a good question, and I get asked it sometimes, but actually not enough, I don't think, because I always find it fascinating how people start. Like, how does this craziness, as you sort of said there, how does it start? And I think there's two or three real clear points in my life. One of them was when I was quite young, and my parents were into endurance sports. They were into running, into triathlon, and I just have so many great memories of going to running races with my mum when I was quite young, when I was like 7 or 8 or even younger. And, you know, my mum would win running races.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that's really cool, you know, and she'd get this trophy and I'd try and steal it from her, you know, and I'd try and run around, I'm the champion, but I wasn't really. And so what I put that down to, like, if you want to, where the fire was first started was the environment that I was in as a child, and having my parents take part in endurance sports, run, do triathlons, and all their friends. So everything of their weekend, often, not every weekend, but often, was about endurance sports. And, you know, Dad would cycle maybe 3 or 4 hours, and then we would meet him and maybe stay in a hotel and come back. So the whole of my childhood was all about endurance sports. And then it kind of, my journey was a little bit interesting, because I went to boarding school, and obviously because I was decent at running, because I'd run with my parents a lot, I was good at school, and then I grew, and rugby kind of took over my life, but I always just loved running. And it was not until it must have been about 2008 or 2009, and a lady came to me and she said, I want your help. And I said, sure, how can I help you? And she said, I'm going to run an ultra marathon. And I was like, what's that? And she explained to me that she was going to run 250 kilometers in a remote part of the earth. I think the first one, she actually did 2 or 3. And it was in the Gobi Desert. And I started to research it, and I was like, wow, this sounds
good.
Really cool. Yeah, this sounds really cool. And so I said to her, let me have a look at it, and I'll tell you if I think I can help. And I researched it, and I was like, I believe in coaching from experience as well as from the textbooks. I think to tell someone to do something, you have to experience it. Otherwise, you have no idea what they're going through. And a lot of coaching is about an emotional connection with the athlete, with the client. And I turned around and I said to her, I've never done one of these things. I know I can help you from a nutrition standpoint, from a physical training standpoint, but I can't really connect on the emotional side as to what you're going to be going through. But I'm willing to help you almost as a learning experience, if you're okay with that. And she was like, I would love that. And I'm going, wow, that's amazing. So I started helping this lady, and it was probably about a year or 2 later that 2 other guys started talking to me about Marathon des Sables, which is 250 kilometers across the Sahara Desert. And I just started reading about it, and I was like, this just looks incredible. So that was really where there's sort of the 3 telling points, I think, in my life that I can put it down to, where I really started researching a bit more about endurance, and then I just knew that I'd end up doing this stuff. And Yeah, I mean, it's weird because there was that point in my life where I was obviously playing rugby and I wasn't doing much. I was still running, but I wasn't doing a lot. And then, those in 2008, 2009, it was just like bang.
Let's talk about MDS. We share a love for endurance. Like, I don't do much of it now, and there's a reason for that. However, I have not the crazy distances you've run in the past, but every week I used to be out at the Waddies. I was the first person that Lee Harris took out. When he formed the Trail Runners, he'd be going out there every week on his own, like moving rocks and, and like running these crazy distances. He was like, do you want to come? And I loved it. And that's how the Trail Runners were formed. And MDS was always a race that I wanted to do. Whether or not it's something I'd do in the future, I don't know. But it was always something I really wanted to do. How was MDS?
It's incredible. It's very difficult. And this is the thing, Zoe. A lot of these things I try to explain things to people, but a lot of the time I'm like, it's one of those things that you almost have to, I'm going to try and explain it, but it's one of those things that you almost have to experience. You can't, and I was doing a talk yesterday. I was talking to a small group yesterday, and we were talking, they asked me about MDS, and I was like, I went to the Sahara thinking that it was a desert and that deserts had sand in them, which it does have a bloody shit ton of sand in it. Don't get me wrong.
It's terrain though, but MDS, isn't it?
There's all sorts. Mm-hmm. You've got mountains, you've got salt flats, you've got trails, you've got sand, you've literally got everything. And I had quite an interesting moment back there in 2015 where I really just stopped in the middle of nowhere, and you're hundreds of kilometers from any civilization. And I just looked around, and there was, at this point, we're on like a salt flat, and the earth was parted. There was a big sort of gap in the earth that just went down. And I just stood there and I thought, wow, what actually are we on this earth? What are we doing here? Are we supposed to be here? And you go through all these really deep sort of moments that are just so powerful. And then the next minute, you're back in the race, and there's 1,000 people going through the Sahara all in one line, all carrying their own equipment, all going through the same pain, the same highs, the same lows. And it's just absolutely incredible. There's no signal for mobile phones. There's no connection with the outside world. There's no showers. There's nothing. You're just there with your backpack, which has everything you need to survive for 8 days.
Did you ever feel like letting that flare off?
No.
I'm just wondering, how tough did it really get? Did it ever cross your mind?
No. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things. Like, one of my biggest, if you could say, what am I most upset about in the world right now? Mm-hmm. It's the amount of choice that we have. Mm. Choice is making us weak. Choice is making everyone weak, and it's giving us what we know, decision fatigue. We're having to make over 30,000 decisions a day. And there's way too much choice. If you give yourself a choice to press the eject button or not to, you're already halfway to failure. There was only one reason why I was going to the Sahara. That was to finish the race. Mm. There's only one reason why I'll start something. And we hear this all the time. People have contingency plans and plan Bs. And if you're one of those people, I love you. I still love you. It's okay. But to me, it just doesn't work. I'm very single-minded. I'm probably not intelligent enough to focus on plan A, B, C, D, and E. I just want plan A. Just do it, And this is the thing, is that I think when we give ourselves a choice of, okay, I know I've got an ejector button. I know I've got an emergency. I know I can get out of here. Then that'll just eat away. It'll start from the back of the skull.
Yeah.
And it'll just come all the way forward. And I think that's what's happening now in the world. We just, and I see it with kids. When I was 5 years old and 6 years old, I wasn't given an option. I was told, like, you're going to have this. this is the way it's going to be. Now, you can say for right or for wrong, Zoe, but I just think choice is just huge at the moment, and it's causing us all sorts of problems. So that was the same in the Sahara. We were going to get to the end. I mean, listen, we had to walk, we had to crawl. It wasn't all plain sailing. There was carnage along the way, but there was no way that I wasn't getting to the end of it.
Yeah, 100%. In those situations, giving up just isn't an option. My friend ran the Sahara, and he said he was about to light that flare. Whether or not, this is what he talks about in his motivational talks, whether or not he would have done, I don't know. But he said on that moment he was going to light that flare. A blind man ran past, and apparently he runs it every year, the Korean blind man.
English gentleman who was blind, who was running the year I was running. So, there's a lot. And Sir Ranulph Fiennes was running, and he was 74 years old.
Wow, how awesome.
Yeah.
And what was he like? Did you?
Yeah, he's super nice. Yeah, we had a chat, and he's there with his half his hand cut off, and because he cut a few of his fingers off, didn't he, in his shed, and so it's just, and that's what's interesting. The most interesting thing about endurance sports, you get to meet people that, and I often say it, we have a huge endurance community here at Inner Fight, and you sometimes sit. And I sit back and I look at people that are around a table having a cup of coffee or something, or going for a run together. I'm like, you just would never pair these people together. It's almost like inviting 10 random people to a dinner party sort of thing. You would just never think that they're going to be together. But we come together through this love of endurance sports, which, in my opinion, is a love of self-discovery. We're curious, and we want to know more about ourselves, our limits, our motivation. We want to continue to learn. And that's a common goal in all those people. And, there's blind people, there's people without legs, there's people without arms, there's white people, black people. It doesn't matter. Thin people, fat people. It's irrelevant. There is no... and it's kind of like how we conduct our business here in a fight. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what your ability is. I don't care if your legs are working or they're not. Skin color, nothing. It doesn't even matter, because our purpose is so much bigger. And our purpose in endurance is curiosity and self-discovery. That's what it is. And that's what's amazing.
Let's talk about Inner Fight. How did that come about? What was the motivation behind you starting Inner Fight? And how is Inner Fight doing at the moment with everything that's going on with COVID?
I'll answer the second question first, and then the first question second. Right now, things are great. It's been a very challenging year for everybody. What we identified a year ago was that people would need what I spoke about earlier, emotional support, and we went very fast into helping people emotionally through fitness. We identified that health was going to be super important, and we just took our game up. We just supported people. We created more touch points. We created more community, and now, listen, Zoe, things are not perfect. It's been a very tough year, but I measure our success based on the number of people that I see getting better at life. And right now, lots of people are getting a lot better. And really, that's how it started. It was back in 2004, 2005. Similar story to the endurance story, when a guy said to me, well, it's a longer story, but essentially he needed help. And I said that I'd help him. And I just get a lot of pleasure out of helping people. I'm quite self-centered, to be honest. I'm self-motivated. And I think to be self-motivated and perhaps as strict as I am a lot of the time, you have to be quite selfish. But I also care a lot about other people. And, that's really, if I look at all of the sort of turning points of my life, how Inner Fight started, how I got into sort of ultras, they're all because I agreed to help other people. And I started training one guy who was incredibly overweight, and he was 135 kilos. And I remember in the first week that we were training together, he said, "It's my goal to be your training partner." And I admit, inside, I sort of laughed a little bit. I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. And I was like, you know what? That gave me fire for me to train him so well that he would be able to be my training partner. And because a load of people saw what I'd done with him, more people start to come. And it's kind of a case of, I think it's a case of if you build it, they come. And you know, a lot of the time we're all about immediate gratification. How do I grow my coaching business from 0 to 300 clients in 12 months? How do I do this? How do I make it faster?
Yeah.
You know, I speak to a lot of junior coaches at the moment, or people just moving into, be it personal training or any role of coaching. Like I've been coaching for over 20 years, and I don't think I took any money for coaching for at least the first 6 or 7 years. I just coached people, and I just tried my ways. You know, and I made mistakes and I listened to people, I got feedback. And then in 2008, I started the brand. And that wasn't for money either. It was, I just shared my training programs. So the training that I was doing, I was just sharing it online to a point in 2010 when I was working for Nike. And I was like, you know what? My passion is helping people. My passion is human behavior. I'm curious about human behavior, why we react the way we react, why we take care of our health or don't take care of our health in the various ways. And I said, I'm going to make this my living. And I already had the brand platform. So it was partially easier, you could say, but because I've done a lot of the work before. And yeah, I went on my own, and it's over 10 years now. And you know, right now we're a 7,000 square foot facility here in Studio City in Dubai. And, you know, we have 250 to 300 endurance clients. We have a few hundred members at the gym. We're not big. We're, you know, we don't have over 600 members. Like, we're not a big, but we're a community-based brand and a community-based fitness brand. And we know everyone's name, and people come here because it's human nature to want to be part of something. And I liken it to, we're all foreigners here in Dubai. And, you know, in the UK, you'd go to things like your village fete or something happening at your town hall, and that's where you get friends, that's where you get community, but that doesn't really exist here in Dubai. So we've kind of tried to take those things, and from my team sport background, we've taken those things, we've implemented them here, that we can forge friendships within the gym that can flourish outside. And it fits in with our vision. We just want to help people to get better and become better human beings. And it's kind of working, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that you say it's a community, and that's very much as an outsider. I've never trained in your gym, but I know a lot of people that have, and as an outsider looking in, that is how it seems. And it's really nice when, you know, I'm out and about and I'm running and I see the Inner Fight t-shirts, you know, yeah. And I think people have, you know, some people maybe have the opinion that everyone who goes to Inner Fight is super fit, because you do have some really fit athletes there. But I see all shapes and sizes in your t-shirts, and that is awesome. That's really awesome to see. And, you know, they've all got one thing in common, I guess, and that's the grit and determination. But
and that's what we say. You've actually given a real good summary. We are all shapes and sizes, mate. Like, we've worked with people at 180, 200 kilos. I still have people in my gym that can't run 500 meters without stopping. But, you know, that's absolutely fine, because they're here and they're doing it, and they possess what you said. To us, if they can gel with our values of fun and hard work and honesty, simplicity, mental strength, all of these things, then we can help them to get better. And that's the thing. Like, everyone, for someone, 500-meter run is their Everest. For someone else, 100K run is their Everest. And that's what's beautiful. God made us all, or our Creator made us all so unique. So why are we comparing ourselves with each other? It doesn't matter. And a lot of people say to me, I can't come to your gym, you're all too... No, we're not. You think we are, and that's an excuse you're using to stop yourself from coming in. If you want to have fun, you want to work hard, come and see us, you know, and that's what we've said since the start. I mean, obviously, sometimes, don't get me wrong, Zoe, sometimes I put it out on social media and it scares people the way that we do things, but maybe that's just a marketing plan.
I speak to a lot of endurance athletes, and one question that I always ask them, and I want to ask you this question too, because I have my own opinion on this answer, because I've experienced it myself. And that is, do you think that endurance sports masks emotional pain?
And no.
And I think you know what I'm getting at when I ask this question, because we tire ourselves out so much physically that we don't have the time to really think about what's going on in our lives, and it can just get put on the back burner.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on both things, but not everyone that is doing endurance sports is masking emotional baggage, so to speak. Some definitely are. Some are using endurance sports to address emotional issues. Some people will become more emotionally aware and therefore better humans, better mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, whatever, because through endurance sports, they're able to become more emotionally aware. And that's what's really incredible. Other people go into endurance sports and realize that if they're not emotionally aware, that endurance sport could crush them. Because endurance sport, for a lot of people, is driven by ego, but successful endurance athletes are not driven by ego. They're driven by something a lot deeper, which is emotional awareness. So it's a really interesting, it's a super interesting question. And I think, and that's what makes it so interesting. If we go back to what I said, those 8 to 10 people sat around a table having a coffee, every single one of them, we slowly learn about their story and why they're there. And so many people come because they think that they're addressing one issue, but then which is normally weight loss or health. You know, I want to be healthier, I want to be a little bit fitter. But then through endurance sports, or even just through working out, they get answers to literally a plethora of questions that they've had, which that to me is super powerful.
When I used to train a lot, like crazy distances, I never did it properly in terms of the nutrition, the recovery. And if you're doing all this properly, then mentally I think you're going to be better up here. But I know I was just wiped out all the time. And and it's so easy to forget about things that you have going on in your life. Remember, you know, I was always having problems with my properties in the UK, and I just didn't even face them when I was training. You know, the only time I'd think about them when I was lying in bed on a night. But then I was just like so tired, you know, that I'd just go to sleep. So
it is super interesting. And that's where, as I said, everyone is so unique. And that's why I think as human beings, it's important that we ask interesting questions to people and then listen to the answers, because I've learned so much from the clients that I've coached or that have come through our coaching structure here, just by asking them questions and by listening. And, you know, we've all had, Dubai's quite and not just Dubai, but the world is an interesting melting pot of experiences. And, you know, most of the people that I work with are 35 upwards. That's quite a lot of experience of life. You know, we don't all, despite people saying they go through life with their eyes closed, they don't. You know, people, it's just that we don't have the patience to ask them the right questions and listen to the answers and to draw out their experiences in the right way. But the point here is simple, that we learn so much from others if we're ready to ask questions and listen to the answers and then ask more questions, which that doesn't often happen.
Where do you get your inspiration from, Marcus, when you're training? And is there any specific tactics or techniques, or is every race different? Is there something that you do that really keeps you going when the going gets tough?
The answer is twofold, and I think it starts way before the race, the event, or whatever it is. I believe that we're a product of our environment, we're a product of our habits. So I think you have to look every day at what you do. And I believe that if you prepare correctly for races, yes, they're going to be challenging, and yes, there are going to be times, but that you sort of, you ask yourself some some questions. However, if your preparation for the race, if it's a 3-month dial into a race or an event, if that is really on point, starting a race is just the icing on the cake. It's just beautiful because you've done everything. You haven't skipped a training session. You've taken care of your body by good sleep. You've eaten well. You've read the right books. You've taken care of all your equipment. You should be on the start line of the race thinking, this is it. This is everything I've trained for. And honestly, when we work with athletes that do everything, the race is the easy part. And I'll say that to people and be like, what do you mean? Watch. It's way harder, Zoe, to wake up at 4:30 a.m. 67 times in preparation for that race than it is to do that race. You've done all the hard yards. And that's what people don't quite buy into and quite understand the importance of the training program, which is the process, which is what we're living every single day. Now, when it comes to the race, yes, you're going to push harder. Yes, it's going to be, I give you an example. We were doing a challenge out in Al Qudra in summer last year. And on the last bit, we'd been out there for about 8 hours. And on the last bit, it was like 54 degrees. But because you've done this training and because you're somehow have a relaxed mindset, okay, it's 54 degrees. What do we do? And of course, like the rational mind saying, okay, stop this. This is stupid. But you're like, no, we trained for this. We've done all of this training. What's the smart thing to do right now? Just back off a little bit. If you fight it and you keep trying to run at a pace that you thought you could run at or ride at a pace that you thought you could ride at, if you fight against it, you're never going to win. You have to have this cool mindset that says, okay, what's going on? Let's just back off. And so that's how I approach it. And that's how I think people should really understand it, that the things that you do every day, the process makes you strong when it comes to the challenges because you've trained yourself in a way that you can get through it.
I miss that so much. Look, I still train, but just that kind of going up to Al Qudra and doing like the 100K on the bike and doing the really long runs and doing it consistently and doing it with your friends. And there's just something that is really special about that.
Yeah, it is. And that's what, I saw a lot of people when I moved more into the endurance scene, I used to hear a lot of people would come to me and say, can you help me? I said, okay, what's going on? They say, I hate my training. I'm like, what? You hate your training? Okay, why? And then the next person would come and, can you help me? Yes, okay, what's going on? I hate my training. I just can't wait for this to be over. I'm like, you've committed 6 months of your life to do something truly special, be it run a marathon, half Ironman, whatever it is, and we're 5 months in and you hate it? What is that? I want people to wake up in the morning and go, yes, I can't wait to get on my bike this morning. This is absolutely it. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm excited about. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, listen, Zoe, I don't wake up every day doing backflips out of bed. But most days, because I'm focused, like this morning, I was on my bike. I woke up 5 o'clock. I can't wait for the session to start at 6. Like, I'm genuinely excited about it. And I think if we can, but there's a reason why I am, because I'm in touch with my motivation, with my why. If we can unlock that in people, but the sad reality is a lot of people sign up for a marathon, a 10K, a sprint distance triathlon, an Ironman for the wrong reasons. And it goes back to what you were saying before, they're masking emotional imbalances. Maybe my marriage is not going in the right way. I'll do this to somehow put me back on track. So what really is the motivation? Have they dug into it? A lot of people they haven't. And it's a tough one because where we're at mentally is a product of our life and of our subconscious. And so to unpick that can actually be quite painful. And we have to really, I've used this example quite a lot recently. Hopefully it works for the listeners, but it's almost like an onion. When you take the skin off an onion, it doesn't make you cry. But when you keep peeling the layers off this onion and you get down to the juicy stuff in the core, literally when you're chopping it, you're crying like hell. And humans are very similar. If we want to go really deep inside and ask these deep questions and say, so Zoe, tell me a little bit about childhood. How were you treated by your friends, by your family? Are there any points of your childhood that actually stand out? Were you bullied in school? All of these things will form subconscious behaviors that somehow lock you into what you become as an adult. And if we want to unlock it, we have to open the onion right up. And it's super deep, but it's incredibly powerful. And it's so freeing when you get it out. You know, and the other week, and someone asked me if I was bullied at school, and I was like, that's just an amazing question. Thank you for asking that.
Were you bullied at school?
Know? Yeah, I was, because I was so rude to people. I was bullied all the time, and it's had an effect on me, and I know it has.
Really interesting. What I love about endurance is that it's like you say, it's like peeling the layers off an onion, and it really makes you, I've always said it's such a raw sport. So whereas ego might get you into endurance, when you're actually out there, it becomes less about the physical, but more about the mental, or maybe a mixture of both. I don't think ego comes into that then, because it's just so raw. It just strips you bare. And it's really difficult when you're training with a group of people and you're doing challenges, especially when there are events like multi-day events. It's really difficult to hide. It's difficult to hide who you are, because it shows the truth in our personalities and who we are. And I think that's what I love about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, even if you don't make it through an event, you pull out, that also shows some of your true colors and shows that you haven't dealt with certain things, because you can, and I've seen this a lot. I see people pull out of a multi-stage race or pull out of a single stage race, you know, a shorter race, and my hamstring was torn, but then half an hour later they're walking around. It's like, mate, if your hamstring was torn, then you can't walk, you know, but it's like they just want to end their suffering, because if they continued in their suffering, then they'd have to answer some questions, and they're not ready to answer the questions yet. And I don't want to sound too harsh on people. Like, it's natural. I've actually also pulled out of the first ultra I did, I pulled out of about 160, 170 kilometers into it. And, you know, it was a very tough time for me after that, because I then had to, I knew I had to answer those questions. I knew I had to do some, as we kind of know it in simple terms, some soul searching. And I had to, you know, I had to dig a little bit deep, and I had to figure out why I'd pulled out. And, you know, was it because of the training, or did I just not want to suffer any longer? And why didn't I want to suffer any longer? And it was an interesting time, you know, and some nights I'd wake up thinking about it. It's sort of, it haunts you in a way. But these are all the fascinating things about humans and about human behavior and why we do the things that we do. And that's really what fascinates me in you could say, in endurance sports, and also in the job that I call it a job. I don't know if my job's a job, but anyway, it's absolutely fascinating.
I listened to your podcast. I think it was with a guy called Chris.
Yes, Chris Williamson. There
was one thing that you said that really resonated with me. I listened to the whole podcast, and this was one thing that really stuck out, and it got me thinking. And it was when you said, when you were talking about injury and progress, we give ourselves a hard time. But if we track our progress, we can see how far we have come. And that got me thinking, because I was thinking not just about injuries, but I was also applying that to life as well. You know, maybe if you're on a business journey and, you know, and I was thinking about everything that I've been trying to achieve this year, and I give myself a hard time for not achieving it. But then if I literally just think back to where I was a year ago, it's like, oh my gosh, like, look how far you've actually come in that space of time. And we just don't do that often enough.
We don't, and I think one of the major issues that we don't do that, Zoe, is we have these moments, right, where we think we can take on the world, and we start writing, we fill our notebooks, or however we visualize things, and we put it all down. But we don't actually realize how much time it will take us to achieve those 25 different points that we've put in. And then we don't track it. So we're sort of in this lost world that there's no real sort of structure and accountability. Whereas if you said, okay, I realized after 6 months that I couldn't do these 25 things in a year, but I really focused on point 1 to 5, and I'm doing a really good job. And actually that's taking 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Then there's got to be a little bit of reality that kicks in and says, well, hang on a minute, you've actually done really well. And this is really the case. It really strengthens the case for some form of coach in some form or shape. Now, that could be like in business, we have business coaches. In fitness, we have personal trainers. In life, we have life coaches. You have to figure out what sort of coach is going to help you, because everyone needs accountability unless you're incredibly well disciplined. Accountability is one of the main things, and it's hard to put a price on it because it's literally invaluable. But often we think we can do it on our own. It's ego driven. We think that getting help is weakness. We're not vulnerable enough. And we just go, and then we're like, well, I haven't actually done what I wanted to do. And it's like, well, actually, you've done a lot. Some people are lazy, and some people watch way too much Netflix and play too much time on social media. Don't get me wrong. That is absolutely guaranteed. But a lot of people, they're doing what they can do.
I'm guilty of that sometimes, I have to say.
Yeah. It's challenging.
So, Marcus, you do a lot of challenges that a lot of people fear. A lot of people think that is possibly impossible, if that sounds right. What do you fear? What's your greatest fear in life?
I think I've got a couple. One of them is that I would let my family down by not living correctly. I think that's one of my biggest motivations. I've been given an incredible platform to be successful by both my parents and also by my wife. And they've sacrificed a lot. All three of them have sacrificed a lot so I can do what I want to do. And I never would want to feel like I've let them down. Also, I think one of my biggest fears is not living. And I define living by waking up every morning, feeling great, and going out and doing the things that I want to do and that make me happy. I see way too many people waking up every morning feeling like crap and going to do things that they hate. And that, I'm scared, that's horrible, and I think I've struck quite a good balance for that not to happen. And I think that's really it. I mean, I think there's a way to do everything, if what did we do recently? We sent Arabs to Mars. If we can do that, like, I don't really think there's much that we need to be afraid of. Like, you can figure it out. We can make humans faster. We can make humans slower if we need to. We can emotionally balance people. We can unlock subconscious behaviors. We've proven you just need to be in the right environment to do it. There's no need. There's a lot of people that go through life way too scared. And actually they're scared of achieving great things because they just don't think it's for them, and that's very sad, so I just they're the only two fears that I really have. I don't want to let my family down, and I want to live every day.
You mentioned thank you for that. And I like the fact that you answer that. I always wonder when I ask that question to a guy whether or not they're going to say, I don't have any fears. And I love it when men are really, because some guys do say that. I love it when men are really open about that. And they're like, I fear this. You spoke earlier, Marcus, about your why, that you're very clear about your why. What is your why? I'm going to ask you two questions in one again. What is your why? And you also alluded earlier to kind of God created us and put us on this planet. Do you feel that are you the person now that God created you to be?
Wow, that second one's brilliant. The first one, I'll hit. It's quite straightforward. I'm curious to figure out why we're here. That fuels a lot of my motivation around. You can link it in with human potential. You can link it in with many different things, but I'm very curious about humans and the human body and mind and how it works. And I think I've got a certain skill set to unlock that in myself and in other people. And that motivates me incredibly. And the second question, I don't know. Like, I'll give you a little bit of a timeline on this. You go to school and they tell you where you came from, and then they talk about evolution. And then when I went to boarding school, we were quite a strict Church of England school, and you sort of get, you get into that side of things, and then you sort of grow up and you start to question what's going on a bit, and then I don't know. Does anyone know? Like, is this does it change? And then you sort of think, well, 15 years ago, I was working in the corporate world. I was working for Adidas. I loved it. Honestly, loved every single minute of it. It was some of the best years of my life. But then 15 years later, this conversation. So I just think we need to stay, and I think this is, it really loops back to a lot of what we're talking about with endurance people. I just think we need to stay super open-minded, try and ask people good questions, try and listen, and then just stay curious, keep having fun, and cool stuff happens. And, where's it all going? I have no clue. On a deeper level, I change my mind every single day. So I don't know. That's a really tough question.
Okay, thank you for that. You alluded earlier that your mom, she's been very influential to your journey, both your parents. Sounds like you've been surrounded by some pretty powerful women in your life, which has impacted. There's like your mom, and then there's your wife. Your wife's very much into fitness too, and she's an entrepreneur. You both started, I think it was Smith Street back in 2015. Yeah. How crucial have these significant women been in your life?
It's probably hard to describe it. It's incredibly hard. It's funny because Mum used to give me a real hard time when I was younger, and I used to eat a lot. I was never overweight. I've never been overweight. And Mum almost used to bully me when I was younger, and she used to keep telling me that if I keep eating, I'm going to get fat. If I keep eating, I'm going to get fat. I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? But, she just did incredible. She's always just done, even till this day, she just does incredible things for me. And she still sends me messages in, just random, just like I'm 12 years old sort of messages, And it's like, she's sort of fully embraced tech and when she's always sending me new apps to talk to her on, and so yeah, absolutely huge. And then with Holly as well, like we met in 2003 and we've been together since then, and it's just, I think that was probably one of my fears when I was sort of a teenager, and when you're sort of growing up and you realize that people get married and you live together and all this, and I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't know how it's going to go. And yeah, when we met, it was just like, it just went well. And as I said, I guess I'm probably quite selfish in some of the things that I've wanted to do. But I'll always ask her what she thinks, and her opinion, I won't always agree with it, but I'll always listen. And I'll always try and see it from her side. And, she's an incredibly strong human being. I guess probably the hardest thing was sort of, when I had my crash, and one of the guys I was with had to call her and tell her to come to the hospital. And, I think about that a lot. I'm like, that must have just been horrific. Like, it must have just been awful. And she came, and she was just perfect. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't crying. Mum comes in and they open up the curtain. I'm in ICU, and Mum's just like in floods of tears. She thinks I'm going to die, and no one really knew. And Holly came in, and she was just like, and I was like, how are you so strong? you know, and she's yeah, they're both just incredible, Zoe, and I think I constantly learn a lot from both of them, and they can still teach me a lot because they just know so much that I don't know. And I think that's one of the things that I've always, like, I know quite a lot of things, but I also know that I don't know a lot of things as well, you know, and so to have those two people in my life is just, it's unbelievable. It really is.
That's awesome. This is going to be my last question to you, Marcus, because I think we've just gone a little bit over time, and I know you're busy and you've been training this morning. Yeah. I'd just like to know, how do you connect with your heart?
Yeah, you've asked me some good questions. I think, you know, I think it's a little bit, that's probably based on who you are and different things. But for me, I follow a lot of daily sort of rituals, different times of just stillness that I'll follow every day. I'll follow different habits that I maintain with Holly as well. One of them I think is really powerful. Every day we'll eat dinner together, and nothing's ever off limits. Like sometimes it's just talking about the day, but we'll never really, I'm not one to want to put stuff off. If there's a problem or if there's something that I want to address, we'll talk about it. So I think you connect with yourself, with your heart by having those conversations. And, you know, they don't always go good. Sometimes, especially when it's your wife, and then emotion comes into it as well. You know, you sort of, you end up having quite deep conversations and opinions come into it, and it's all gets quite interesting and quite heated. But I think to really, if you're not having those sorts of conversations, and if you're not spending just uninterrupted time with yourself and with others, is the key to connecting with who you really are. And in a world that's incredibly noisy, I think we're losing our focus on doing that, and we need to up our game a lot. So that's kind of how I do it. It works. Like for me, there's other ways as well, but that's kind of what works, and I feel pretty connected.
Thank you for being such an amazing guest, and I could talk to you for another hour. But I know I know you have to go, and just thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's so good that we got to get together, because I wanted to ask you a year ago to come onto this podcast, but okay. I think I was a little bit shy, so I never asked you.
That's one thing you just have to ask.
Exactly. If you don't ask, you don't get, do you?
Exactly. So, no, thank you so much. I appreciate it. They were great questions.
Thank you so much. And good luck. We never mentioned this, but good luck in your next race. Your next race is in Spain, and all the best of luck for that. I'll be following your progress. Have an amazing day.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thanks a lot, Zoe. Cheers. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.